I saw the 666 microchip in hell, and I need to tell you it is not what anyone thinks it is. It is not a vaccine, it is not a credit card, it is not any physical device that will be implanted in your hand or forehead. What I discovered on the other side changed everything I thought I knew about the mark of the beast, about control, about the battle for human souls. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm a 42-year-old systems engineer who spent 20 years designing security protocols for financial institutions. I never believed in any of this. Heaven, hell, near-death experiences. I dismissed all of it as brain chemistry and wishful thinking. I was a man of logic, of code, of systems that could be tested and verified. But what happened to me 3 months ago shattered every certainty I had built my life upon. It was February 14th. I remember because my daughter had asked me to help her make valentines for her class, but I told her I had to finish a project. Always another project, always another deadline. I was driving home late from the office, exhausted, running on my 4th coffee of the day and maybe 3 hours of sleep. The highway was nearly empty. I remember the digital clock on the dashboard glowing 11:38 in the cold blue light. I remember thinking I should have left earlier. I remember the truck. It came from the merge lane, a massive 18-wheeler that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. The driver must have fallen asleep. I saw it too late, already crossing into my lane, the chrome grille filling my peripheral vision like a metal wall collapsing toward me. I yanked the wheel. The tires screamed. For one suspended moment I thought I might make it, that I might slip past with inches to spare. Then the impact came, a sound like the world splitting open, metal shrieking and glass exploding in a crystalline wave. My car spun. I felt the seatbelt cutting into my chest, felt my head snap sideways against something hard. The airbag deployed with a chemical smell and a force that drove the breath from my lungs. Then the spinning stopped and everything went still. I tried to breathe, but my chest would not move. I tried to speak, but no sound came. I could hear voices, distant and echoing, someone shouting to call 911, someone else saying, "My God, he is not breathing." I wanted to tell them I was fine, that I just needed a moment, but my body would not respond. A strange coldness spread through my limbs, starting at my fingertips and creeping inward like frost, spreading across a window. The pain in my chest intensified for a moment, a crushing pressure that made spots dance across my vision. And then suddenly, it was gone. The coldness was gone. I felt light, impossibly light, as if gravity had released its hold on me. I opened my eyes, and I was standing beside the wreckage of my car. I could see my body slumped in the driver's seat, blood running down the side of my face, my eyes open but unseeing. I could see the other driver stumbling toward me, his face pale with shock. I could see the headlights of other cars pulling over, people running toward the scene with their phones out. But everything seemed distant, muted, as if I were watching it through thick glass. I tried to call out, but no one responded. I reached toward the man approaching my car, but my hand passed through his shoulder like smoke. That was when I understood. Time of death, I would later learn, was 11:47 p.m. The highway began to fade. The lights, the voices, the cold February air, all of it dimmed and receded until I was standing in a space that had no clear boundaries. It was not dark exactly, but the light that filled it was wrong, a sickly grey luminescence that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I called out hello, my voice sounding thin and small. No answer came. I started walking, though I could not tell if I was actually moving or if the space around me was shifting. The air felt thick, oppressive, carrying a smell like burning metal and something organic rotting beneath it. I heard sounds in the distance, wailing and screaming that rose and fell in waves, never quite resolving into individual voices. I do not know how long I walked. Time felt different there, elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that made no sense. But gradually, the grey space began to darken. The walls, if they could be called walls, took on texture and substance. I found myself in a corridor of some kind, the surfaces rough like stone, but pulsing faintly as if they were alive. The temperature rose. Sweat beaded on my forehead and ran down my back. The screaming grew louder, more distinct, joined now by other sounds. Harsh laughter and weeping and a low, grinding rumble that vibrated through the floor beneath my feet. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, and that is when I saw it. Hell. Not the cartoon version with red demons and pitchforks, not the abstract theological concept I had intellectually dismissed, but a real place, terrible and vivid and overwhelming in its wrongness. The chamber stretched away into impossible distances, filled with a red-orange glow that pulsed like the interior of a forge. The heat was crushing, making it hard to draw breath. The air shimmered with it, carrying that smell of burning metal stronger now, mixed with sulfur and something sweet and rotten that made my stomach turn. And the people, thousands upon thousands of them, maybe millions, standing in vast crowds that filled the chamber as far as I could see. They were not on fire, they were not being physically tortured by demons with pitchforks, but the suffering on their faces was absolute. They stood motionless, frozen, their expressions locked in states of anguish and despair and rage and grief. Some were screaming silently, mouths open in eternal agony. Others wept without tears. Others stared into nothing with eyes that had seen too much and could never look away. I stumbled forward, unable to process what I was seeing, my engineer's mind trying desperately to find some rational explanation and finding none. That was when I noticed the marks, on their foreheads and on the backs of their right hands, glowing with a faint, sickly green light, were symbols. They looked like brands burned into the skin, but they moved and shifted as I watched, complex patterns that hurt to look at directly. They were not physical marks. They seemed to exist both on the surface of the skin and somehow deeper, embedded in the essence of the person themselves. I moved closer to one of the frozen figures, a woman whose face was twisted in silent agony. The mark on her forehead was intricate, geometric, almost digital in its precision, and in the center of it, clearly visible, were 3 numbers. 6, 6, 6. My heart, if I still had one, began to race. I stumbled backward, looking around wildly at the vast crowd. They all had it. Every single person in this terrible place bore that mark, that digital-looking brand with the 666 at its core. I had read about this, the mark of the beast, Revelation 13. I had dismissed it as ancient symbolism, a warning against Roman emperor worship or political tyranny. But here it was, real and visible and terrifying, marking every soul trapped in this place. I moved deeper into the chamber, drawn by a horrible fascination I could not resist. As I walked among the frozen crowds, I began to notice patterns in the marks. They were not all identical. The core 666 was always there, but the patterns surrounding it varied from person to person, complex geometric designs that seemed to encode information. I leaned closer to examine one, and as I focused on it, I suddenly knew things. I saw the life of the man who wore it, saw his choices, saw the moment he had accepted something, agreed to something, made some fundamental decision that had bound him to this place. I pulled back, reeling. The mark was not just a symbol, it was a record, a data file, a spiritual encryption that contained the full ledger of a soul's rebellion against God. But what shocked me most was what I understood about how they received it. There was no moment of forced implantation, no government official holding them down and injecting a chip, no Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates distributing vaccines. These people had marked themselves. Through countless choices, countless agreements with darkness, countless moments of saying yes to pride, yes to hatred, yes to worship of self above all else, they had written this code into their own spiritual essence. The mark was not something done to them. It was the visible manifestation of what they had chosen to become. I stood in that terrible place, surrounded by the frozen damned, staring at the marks on their foreheads and hands, and a terrible understanding began to dawn. The microchip was not coming. It was already here, not in our hands but in our hearts, not implanted by force but accepted by choice, one decision at a time, one compromise at a time, one moment of saying yes to the system that runs this world and no to the God who made it. I saw businessmen who had crushed others for profit. I saw influencers who had sold lies for fame. I saw religious leaders who had used God's name to control and abuse. I saw ordinary people who had simply chosen themselves, always themselves, until the pattern was set so deep it became their identity. The mark was choice made visible, sin made permanent, rebellion encoded into the spiritual DNA, and the horror that gripped me as I stood there was not just that these souls were lost, but that I recognized the beginnings of the same pattern in my own life, the selfishness, the pride, the constant choice to prioritize my work, my success, my comfort over everything else, even over my own daughter who just wanted me to help her make Valentines. I was a systems engineer. I understood how code works. Once you write it in, once the pattern is established, once the protocol is set, it becomes the operating system. And these souls had written the wrong code, had accepted the wrong protocol, had allowed themselves to be programmed by the enemy of God until the mark was inevitable. I do not know how long I stood there, paralyzed by understanding and horror and a dawning terror that I might be looking at my own future. The heat pressed down on me. The screams echoed endlessly. The marks glowed with their sickly light, and I wanted to run, to escape, to somehow undo everything I had seen and understood. But I could not move. I could only stare at the vast crowds of the damned and see the pattern written in light on their skin, the digital encryption of spiritual death. But I did not understand the full truth until Jesus appeared and showed me what this microchip really is, what it means for every person alive today, and how the battle for souls is being fought right now in ways that most people cannot see. I stood there in that darkness, surrounded by souls marked with spiritual code they had written into themselves, when a light appeared that was nothing like the sick glow of that place. It was pure, bright, alive. And I heard a voice that knew my name, that knew every line of code I had ever written in my own life, both the good and the broken. The voice said, "Marcus, you are seeing the end. But I want to show you the beginning. I want to show you how the mark is written, how it can be erased, and what you must tell them before it is too late." And then, in that darkness so thick it felt like it was crushing my chest, I saw him. A light. Not like any light you've ever seen on Earth. This wasn't the harsh fluorescent of a hospital room or the soft glow of a lamp. This was a living light. It pulsed with warmth, with peace, with a love so overwhelming it made every fiber of my being tremble. Jesus, I didn't need anyone to tell me who it was. I just knew. In that moment, surrounded by the screams and the stench of hell, Jesus appeared before me. His presence was the complete opposite of everything around me. Where there was terror, he brought peace. Where there was darkness, he radiated light. Where there was hopelessness, he offered hope. The souls around me recoiled. They couldn't bear to be near his light. But I couldn't look away. Tears streamed down my face. Tears I didn't even know I could cry in that place. I fell to my knees, or whatever passed for knees in that spiritual realm, and I sobbed. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." And Jesus spoke. His voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It wasn't loud, yet it filled every space. It wasn't harsh, yet it carried absolute authority. When he spoke, everything else fell silent. "Enrique." He said my name. and hearing it from his lips broke something inside me. I didn't bring you here to condemn you. I brought you here to show you the truth. I looked up at him, confused. The truth about what? About hell? I was seeing it with my own eyes. I was feeling it with every sense I had. The truth about the microchip, he said. My heart, if I still had one, stopped. The microchip. The thing I'd laughed about. The conspiracy theory I'd mocked my neighbor for believing. The ridiculous idea that had seemed so absurd when I was alive. It's real, Jesus said, and his eyes held mine with such intensity I couldn't look away. But not in the way the world thinks. He raised his hand, and suddenly the scene around us changed. I was no longer in hell. We were standing in what looked like a vast library, but instead of books, there were lives, millions upon millions of lives, playing out like movies on invisible screens all around us. The mark of the beast, Jesus began, is not a physical chip implanted in your hand or forehead. It's not a vaccine. It's not a credit card. It's not technology. I stared at him, trying to process this. Everything I'd heard, every conspiracy theory, every apocalyptic sermon about scanning barcodes and government surveillance, all of it was wrong. The mark, he continued, his voice gentle but firm, is a spiritual allegiance. It's a choice. It's the moment when a person fully and finally rejects me and chooses to live for themselves, for the world, for the enemy. He gestured to the scenes around us. I saw people in boardrooms making deals that destroyed families for profit. I saw teenagers scrolling endlessly on their phones, filling their minds with hatred and lust and pride. I saw religious leaders twisting scripture to justify their own power. I saw mothers and fathers prioritizing everything except their children's souls. The hand represents what you do, Jesus explained. Your actions, your work, how you spend your time and energy. The forehead represents what you think, your mind, your beliefs, your priorities, your worship. I watched as person after person made choice after choice, each decision either drawing them closer to God or pushing them further away. And then I saw it, the moment. For some it was a dramatic rejection, a conscious decision to curse God and embrace evil. But for most, for so many, it was subtle. It was the quiet accumulation of 1,000 small compromises. It was the gradual hardening of the heart. It was the slow fade from I believe to I don't care to I won't obey to I refuse you entirely. And when that final choice was made, when the heart was completely sealed against God, I saw it, a mark. Not visible to human eyes, but clear as day in the spiritual realm. A mark that said, this one belongs to the enemy. This one has chosen rebellion. But Lord, I stammered, the Bible talks about a physical mark. It says no one can buy or sell without it. The system is coming, Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. There will be a time when the world will require allegiance to a leader, a system, an ideology that opposes me, and those who refuse will be outcasts. They won't be able to participate in society, but even then, even when there's a physical mark or system, the spiritual reality is what matters. You can refuse the physical mark and still have a hard heart toward me. And you can avoid the physical system and still be mine if your heart is surrendered. I thought about my own life, all the times I'd chosen comfort over conviction, all the times I'd prioritized money, success, approval over what I knew was right. All the times I'd said, I'll follow you, Jesus, but not in that area of my life. Was I marked? Had I crossed that line? You're here, Jesus said, reading my thoughts, because you were walking toward that mark. You were compromising, justifying, hardening your heart little by little, but I'm giving you another chance. The scenes around us faded, and we were back in hell. The screams returned, the darkness pressed in, But Jesus' light remained, steady and unwavering. When you return to your body, he said, you will have a choice. You can continue the path you were on, the path that leads here, or you can surrender fully to me, not partially, not conditionally, fully. I choose you, I said immediately, desperately. I choose you. Lord, please, I don't want to come back here. I don't want this mark. Then live like it, he said. When you wake up, everything will look the same. Your job, your family, your problems, they'll all still be there. But you will be different, and you must stay different. The enemy will try to pull you back. The world will tell you this experience wasn't real. Your own mind will doubt. But you must remember what you've seen. You must remember the truth about the mark. And then, in an instant, I was back. I gasped and opened my eyes to see a paramedic leaning over me, his face a mixture of shock and relief. "He's back!" the paramedic shouted. "He's breathing!" But I wasn't the same person who had flatlined on that gurney. I was changed. Fundamentally, completely, irreversibly changed. The next weeks were a blur of hospital rooms and doctor consultations and people asking me what happened. But I couldn't tell most of them. How do you explain to someone that you went to hell and met Jesus and learned that the microchip is a spiritual mark, not a physical one? How do you describe the weight of truth that settles on your soul when you realize how close you came to eternal separation from God? My life transformed overnight. The things I used to care about seemed meaningless. My career ambitions, my social status, the opinions of others, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was my soul. What mattered was whether I was marked by God or marked by the enemy. I started reading my Bible like it was oxygen. I prayed like my life depended on it because I realized it did. I began to see the spiritual warfare happening all around me, the constant battle for human hearts and minds. And I started to recognize the patterns, the slow compromises, the gradual drift. The subtle lies that lead people toward that final fatal rejection of God. If you're still watching this, I need you to understand something. God is calling you to pay attention. This isn't just my story. This is a warning for all of us. I used to think the mark of the beast was something I'd recognize immediately, something obvious I could easily avoid. But Jesus showed me the truth. The mark is about allegiance. It's about who you serve with your actions and your thoughts. It's about whether you've surrendered to God or whether you're still holding on to your own kingdom, your own will, your own way. Every day we make choices. We choose what to do with our hands, our time, our talents. We choose what to fill our minds with, what to believe, what to worship. And those choices are either marking us for God or marking us for destruction. The good news, the hope I'm clinging to and want to share with you, is that while you're alive, it's not too late. The mark isn't permanent until you die. You can turn around. You can surrender. You can choose Jesus, but you have to choose. And you have to choose now, not later. Because none of us knows when our time will run out. I didn't plan to die that day. I didn't think I'd end up in hell. But my choices had been leading me there all along. So why am I sharing this testimony with you now? Because we're living in a time when deception is everywhere. People are arguing about vaccines and chips and technology, completely missing the spiritual reality underneath it all. The enemy is brilliant. He keeps us focused on the physical, so we ignore the spiritual. He keeps us debating about what the mark might look like, so we don't notice we're already choosing sides with our hearts. I'm not saying there won't be a physical system. Jesus told me there will be. There will come a time when the world demands allegiance to something that opposes God, and true believers will have to make hard choices. They'll face persecution. They'll lose access to basic necessities. They'll be labeled as extremists and outcasts. But that's not what you should fear most. What you should fear is a hard heart. What you should fear is gradual compromise. What you should fear is waking up one day and realizing you've been marked by your own choices, your own rebellion, your own refusal to fully surrender to God. So here's what you need to do. First, examine your heart. Ask yourself honestly, are you fully surrendered to Jesus? Or are there areas of your life you're still controlling, still compromising in, still justifying? Second, pray for discernment. Ask God to show you the spiritual reality behind what you see in the world. Ask Him to help you recognize deception and truth. Ask Him to keep your heart soft toward Him. Third, make a choice. Today, right now, choose whose mark you want to carry. Choose who you're going to serve with your actions and your thoughts. Choose whether you're going to live for yourself or live for God. And finally, remember that God's protection is real. His power is greater than any mark, any system, any deception the enemy can create. If you belong to Jesus, if you're truly His, sealed by the Holy Spirit, then you have nothing to fear, not from the world, not from persecution, not from any coming system. But you have to be His, fully, not halfway, not conditionally, fully surrendered, fully committed, fully marked by the seal of God, rather than the mark of the beast. This experience changed everything for me. I can never go back to the person I was before. I've seen too much. I know too much. And I can't stay silent. I have to share this message, even if people think I'm crazy, even if they mock me like I mocked my neighbor, because eternity is real, hell is real, and the spiritual mark that determines where you spend eternity is being decided by your choices right now, today, in this moment. Jesus gave me a second chance. He pulled me back from the edge of eternal darkness and showed me the truth. And now I'm passing that truth on to you. The mark of the beast is real, but it's a spiritual mark of rebellion against God. It's sealed when your heart becomes so hard that you finally and fully reject Him. And the only way to avoid it is to surrender your life to Jesus before it's too late. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Don't think you have more time to decide. Choose Jesus today. Surrender your heart, your actions, your thoughts, your whole life to Him. Let Him mark you with His seal, the Holy Spirit, the mark of belonging to God. If this testimony spoke to you, if you feel God calling you right now, don't ignore it. This is your moment. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Pray for discernment and wisdom. And most importantly, make your choice. Surrender your life to Jesus before it's too late. Because the mark you carry into eternity depends on the choices you make right now, today, in this life. And once this life is over, your choice is sealed forever.